just from your experience and what you're seeing with brands trying to launch, there's sort of a juggling act of branding, messaging, PR, marketing, and tech. From what you see, what would be the correct order or sequence to do those things in?
It's all about planning, uh, which sounds trite and stupid, but honestly, that is the truth. When you start with going, okay, where am I at and where do I want to go and what's the difference? And you identify what those points are specifically, you start to see a path to get to where you want to go. If your product or your service or whatever it is in good shape, then, and as far as being ready to be released, even if you're still polishing it off, PR would be your first point because that sort of lays the groundwork for your marketing, right? Your brand awareness is where it starts.
From where I sit, they have to work hand in hand, right? And each one becomes a force multiplier for the other. So I kind of look at it as like if you were to sort of plot out all of the departments of an organization, none of them exist alone. So you can have your executive branch and then your PR branch. And like if the actual delivery of the product or the service is not in good shape, PR has nothing to talk about and the executives have nothing to organize, right?
That's
So
right.
so it all has to kind of work in concert with one another. Um, but as far as sequence goes, one way to think of PR is making good works well known, right? And without those good works, then there's things internally that need to be addressed before someone can go out and scream from the rooftops, "Hey, look at this cool stuff that these people are doing," right? So,
True.
in the simplicity of it, really boils down to have a great product, whether that product is an actual product or a service. You can refer to one or the other, right? So let's just call it under the umbrella of product. So
Yeah.
one, have a great product. Then communicate the benefits or the virtues of this product broad, wide, as far as one can. Then within that, then becomes like a nuanced thing of like, well, quality of communication versus quantity of communication. If you can get into Forbes or whatever it is versus getting into, your local blog.
A lot of the folks that I talk to, customers or whatever, they're like, well, the return on this particular ad or, whatever, they get really down in the minutia of it. And I think just to your point, it's not necessarily the correct way to look at it. You can look at
Well,
ads comparatively and go, all right, this one did better, so maybe I should spend more on that. But there is this whole other side of just sort of slightly intangible that do contribute to the growth and overall expansion of the business.
it's all very well to look at the performance of one ad. And in a vacuum, that might give you some information of how well that ad did.
Mm-hmm.
The correct estimation and analysis of the data is to look at all of the data. Okay, this ad did well, but what warmed the audience to respond to that ad? Were there like 50 blog posts that came before it? Was there a thought leadership campaign that went before it? Was there a magazine article or a podcast interview or something like that all contributed to the customer taking action at that exact moment when the ad hit them? Now, if the ad hit them without any of those other things having come before it, the real question is, would the customer have taken action? And to
Yeah.
me, the obvious answer is no.
Traditionally speaking, the answer is not likely, right? If you don't have something that conveys the well-being of consumers, like puts that idea out there that it's cool to be a surfer and you should buy these surfboards and look at all these people looking off at the waves with that look in their eye that all the surfers have when they're doing that, right? And they go, oh, there's an ad for that surfboard. I want to do that. I want to experience that, right?
And if we
Yeah.
present it in a way that tells the story of the brand and aligns the brand with the person's desire to do better in whatever field it is, whether it's wellness or business or whatever, right? Uh,
Mhm.
that's where the creative aspect comes in. You go, well, how can I do this in a way that benefits both the customer and the brand? This goes back to a lesson I learned when doing like roadside sales.
Mm.
where, I had like a vegetable chopper and I was, smashing it around and doing this demo and like trying to convince people to give me $20 for this thing. And at the end of it, if they went, I don't really need that, I was like, you're right, you probably don't. Like I didn't believe in the product. My heart wasn't in it. All I wanted was that $20 because I needed to make rent. But then I went off and worked for a company that sold art.
Mm.
And man, I could talk to people all day about that because I believed in the product. I believed that the aesthetic improvement in their home would be a good thing. And so if you don't believe in the product, if you're just like going after that $20 to make your rent, if you truly have a good product that fills the need of an audience and a customer base that will create a pool of improvement in their lives, it's the easiest thing in the world to sell because, or to talk about, or to position as a good thing when you believe it, when your heart's in it, when the story is true and genuine. And I just think it makes all of the departments from production through to sales a lot
I,
easier.
Oh, 100%. That's the business that will scale. That's the
Hmm.
business that goes and expands. That's the business that has, longevity, that gets all of those five-star reviews that people are like, yeah, you know,
Yeah.
this is just the best,
Yeah,
right?
and it also, from a reputation management standpoint, it proofs you up against criticism. If the product is unassailable, in other words, if it delivers what it promises, being truth in advertising, right? If it does what you say it does, then it proofs you up against future attacks from an online reputation management standpoint, from a general reputation management standpoint.
Absolutely. I mean, it doesn't take much to have a dip in sales or engagement or whatever with just a little bit of that squeaky stuff happening, where there's somebody who's, got a legitimate complaint about how they were dressed or handled or whatever. And by just kind of baking that into the sort of the qualities of the organization as part of your planning. This is how we handle customer service. This is how we handle quality assurance of our products and or services or whatever it is, right? The more that that's considered, it not only gives a foundation to build a real business. And it's so funny. It's like so common sense that is like you'd think, oh yeah, duh, right? Like
Hmm.
don't be a jerk to your customers, right?
Right.
But it's like a thing that businesses have to learn. It's so common, right? It's just email etiquette alone, just in responding and things like that,
Hmm.
right? Quality
Manners
of
go
product.
go a long way, and not only externally for your external comms, but internal comms too, right? Like how do you treat your staff? You know,
100%.
and if there is a complaint, not to brush it off and say that it's unimportant. Of course it's important, but it becomes a separate issue, which was my point. It's a separate issue of how you treat people versus is the product what you say it is.
Yeah.
So
No,
the brand can stand on that product versus like, okay, do you have an issue internally with your manners and your etiquette and politeness and so on? That can be addressed.
mhm.
But if you're selling t-shirts that tear apart the second you put them on, that's a different issue, right?
Yeah.
That's those t-shirts aren't going to get very many more sales than that.
I mean,
Did I
100%.
phrase that correctly? Very many more sales.
Very many more. I think it's
Yeah.
good. I mean, we're a very
Yeah.
informal, duo here.
Yeah. I'll go with it. No, I
It's
think the concept of knowing who you are first,
yeah.
like that's step zero of putting together your sort of brand values. I mean, you could walk through each one of the steps in like putting together a branding Bible. Like, what are your core values?
Yep.
But even that, like, what are your core values comes as a second question. The question before that is, well, who are you?
That's right.
How would you describe yourself as a brand? It's the same thing as like asking a person that, you know. You gotta know who you are before you know what your values are and what it is that you produce, what it is that you put out, how you communicate those things.
Okay, so 100% true. And it's remarkable how much trouble folks have in defining that. I
Hmm.
was talking to a dear friend of mine he's like a film producer and a director, and he does commercials, he does all kinds of stuff, right? And I was talking to him, and we were talking about this exact point, a simple thing like the about page, right? And we were in fits of laughter because we were like, well, how do you write it? Do you write it like in the third person? You're like Shiloh, like steak, or like you
Hmm.
could get really silly about the whole thing. Do you write it as a true communication? But I actually think that those looking at those kinds of things, not necessarily the minutia as far as planning goes, the minutia of like an about page, but to your point, who are you? What are you doing for a group of people?
Yeah.
How do you improve there? What's your value proposition, so to speak, right? Why should they listen? Why should they engage with you?
Right.
And
But those questions, and in relation to the about page specifically, it's there's another whole conversation about that, which is on do you go on and on about who you are? I tend to disagree. I say that knowing who you are will inform how you communicate what it is that you're doing to assist the people who are your audience or your target audience, right? So
oh,
knowing
100%.
knowing how you relate to them, what problem is it that you're solving for them? But the method of communication, like how you actually communicate that to them, will be informed by the questions that you've asked yourself of, well, who am I, right? As a brand, as a company. So
Yeah.
if like, oh, we're a fun, sort of tongue in cheek, quirky with a little bit of irony in our communication, like that's a self-aware brand who knows who they are. They've answered those questions pretty well. Like they have a sense of identity that then informs every communication inward and outward. And then it's like, well, this is how we solve your problem. Your problem's kind of silly. We've got a silly response to it, kind of thing. But isn't that cool? And it touches just exactly the right buttons for the intended audience.
That's right. That's right. Yeah, it's 100% correct. Because if you don't know that, and also once you go through the exercise of exploring that, it also kind of makes one a little bit more at ease in speaking about yourself, which I've found is often a common problem.
Hmm.
Where the executive or the owner has a tough time. Like, there's a tendency to like hold back those nice things that you want to say about yourself, right? And it's actually quite important, especially if it's who you are, if it's, if you're doing nice things, you should say that, right?
Hmm.
Whatever it is, however it is, and whatever topic it is, but that honesty about that, your honest goals, and sort of bearing your soul in that way, in an appropriate manner, is actually it's a pretty important, and asking those questions gets you there. I tell you, you asked a question at the beginning where you said, like, where does it what are the important steps, and like you laid out a few there. And there's one thing that I've been noticing with a lot of the customers that I've worked with as of late that actually tends to just trip them up in huge amounts of activity that's not particularly the most productive. It's something that I've been changing and correcting for a lot of my companies is the complexity of the systems that they acquire as they build their business up. If you have the systems, created with simplicity in mind and speed of use, the ergonomics are considered. What you find, and you've really like done the planning and looked at what what you know at this point that you need, and you cut out all the other stuff that would just be nice and you're not sure if you need, and you just kind of focus on those key elements. The result is that the systems are often quite simple. The number of components, I mean, I read like a study, there's something like 60% of marketing professionals are overwhelmed by the marketing tech, the tools, and they use something like 50 to I think it was 50 to 80 tools on average per person. just to get their jobs done, right? Like all the tools, all these interfaces and these report this and this business intelligence that and whatever. That's just one sort of sector, one department in an organization. And you kind of start to multiply that between customer service or the sales team, if there is one, e-com, inventory, logistics, ordering, buying, manufacturing, like whatever it is that you do, right? The CRM, the counting. I mean, that could go. So as a business owner, when you're planning these things out by the, sort of the department and you're looking at and you're saying, all right, who am I? What is this business? What does it do? What's its value? And you're kind of figuring that out, aligning the systems to that so that you're not like a stack on top of a stack on top of a stack, and then all of a sudden you've got like a mound of turtles, that are just,
It's such a great point because I think a lot of folks get sort of caught up in the lack of efficiency. It's the illusion of busyness, but having a clear understanding of what is that final valuable thing that you're creating that is valuable to people and that they're willing to purchase or exchange in some way with you for, and having that as your sort of your benchmark or your lighthouse, so to speak.
huge.
It cuts out an enormous amount of wasted time or added busyness for the sake of busyness. Like the efficiency of well, there's the mountain, here's the path, A to B,
That's
or
right.
with a few steps in between versus like this thing and this thing, and that seems like it could help. I don't know, but like, is it going to help? But what's the end result that we're trying to achieve? If you don't have that super clearly defined, it's going to become many opportunities to add complexity where complexity shouldn't be.
It's huge and costs. And then you have systems that you're like, do I really need this? I don't know. I'm afraid to get rid of it because I don't know who uses it. You get to a certain point, you got enough staff or you enough business, enough volume that you can't even just be bothered with it, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's a cost factor, that's a production factor, it's a stress factor, it also is just straight complex, So I love that. That's one of my favorite things to do, to get involved with, is just reviewing a system, simplifying it, and carrying it down to its, kind of its foundation, and putting in what it needs to really operate and predict its own sort of path and future and drive that, right? So you have the tools that you need, but at the same time, decrease the number of complexities around it.
Yeah, it's like understanding what is the job and then what is it going to take to just get the job done.
Once you
Yeah,
get,
it's like you said earlier, it's one of those like self-evident things that just sort of doesn't get looked at.
that's right. That's right. It's a huge factor. It's a huge factor. You just pile it on, and especially after years, you kind of go like, I have no idea how this thing works or what does what. And then it costs a lot of money to undo it or to improve it, or something breaks, and it's awful. Technical debt. That's what they call that. It's terrible.
Yeah, yeah,
Wow, we've touched like philosophizing,
yeah.
even, ethics, the
Not your average conversation about tech
That's
and
right.
PR and branding, etc. All right, well, let's sign off. Thanks, buddy.
Yeah, buddy. We'll catch you later.
All right, cool.